everyone, I just wanted to pop on real quick and briefly talk about some projects that I just made that you will see the making of later in this video. I wasn't very consistent with filming all of the time and making sure that a lot of things were filmed, so I just wanted to pop on and talk about everything real quick. So the first thing that I made, this actually took me the longest and it's what I'm least happy with. The first thing that I made was this very sparkly crop top. I was pretty thorough about describing my making of process for this, so I'm not going to go into too much detail right now. So basically it's just a bra with an added waistband, and then I kind of pseudo drafted this sequin overlay to go on top. So if you want to see how I did that, keep on watching. The pattern I got for free as a free download from a atelier. So I will go ahead and link that down below. I altered it a little bit, but I will definitely link that for you in case you'd like to do it. It is a very, very well-made pattern, and I really like the pattern and how it was made. I just needed a little bit more experience, and the pattern really does need material with a stretch to it. So keep watching if you're interested in that. The next thing I made, I didn't go into a whole lot of detail in the video because I had only about an hour to make it in, and I ended up making it in about an hour and 10 minutes. But it's super simple. What I made was this very huge, I call it a Cinderella skirt because it's very Cinderella blue, and it's a rectangle skirt with about 4 yards of fabric crammed into here. So this is the front. I have a tie in the back that I eventually need to come back and refinish because it's starting to fray. Originally I was going to do like a full formal waistband and put hooks and eyes and a zipper in here, but I didn't have a whole lot of time for that, and I'm just lazy. So I safety pinned the seam together so that it wouldn't pop open while I was dancing, and then I just tied the ties into a bow, and it ended up turning out really cute. This is an excellent skirt for swing dancing. So I wore this with the sparkly top, and I think the pink and the blue really complemented each other very nicely, and it made for a very nice Valentine's Day themed project. So I didn't go into any detail in how I made the skirt, but it's super straightforward. There are a bunch of tutorials around. I'll link the one that I kind of followed. So yeah, super simple, really easy to do. So the next project that I worked on, I'm actually very happy with how it turned out. So for those of you who may not be aware, yesterday was Mardi Gras. So as a native New Orleanian, I am obligated to wear ridiculous amounts of purple, green, and gold, and I have to sparkle, I have to be tacky, I have to be the center of attention. I have to. You just have to. So I made this next outfit entirely out of remnants, which I'm really kind of impressed with myself with. Mostly just for finding somehow the perfect sets of remnants with the perfect cuts and everything that I needed. I don't know how that happened, especially because I've been saving these up over the course of about a year now, probably a little more than that. So the first item I made was super simple. I talked about this a little bit in the making of. This is basically just a tube top. It looks like gold lame, but it's not. It's a very similar fabric. It's spandex, so it's very stretchy, so I didn't have to actually worry about fitting it. So it's literally just a tube. And then what I did was I had this holographic gold paillette fabric that I kind of pseudo drafted a neckline on top of it. So the way that I drafted it is I would do a little twist for the neck and then hook it in the back so that it would give a nice little detail, but it also allows me to get a little bit more creative with the neckline if I ever wanted to wear this again, which I hope this will be my new go-to Mardi Gras outfit, which hopefully I will find myself back in the city of New Orleans for a Mardi Gras eventually. Hopefully next year, but we will see. So I did talk about this a lot in the video, so if you want to see how I made this, just keep on watching. Just real quick, because I didn't pop on once I finished it, because I finished this at work yesterday on my break. I knew my machine was not going to be able to sew through this seam right here, so I just kind of tacked that down with a couple of cross stitches, just really simple. And same thing, I knew my machine was not going to like sewing through the sequins in the tulle here, so I just tacked these down with just a couple of cross stitches to kind of finish the underside and make it look a little bit better. And the last thing I worked on, because when you have gold, you need purple and green, I have this skirt, which I've been wanting a skirt similar to this for a while now. I just haven't been able to find one that I really liked, and I haven't been able to find a pattern that I liked. So this was actually a pattern that was a free download from Itch to Stitch Designs via Craftsy, so I will also link that below if you're interested. And it's a Lindy petal skirt, and I hope the camera's picking it up, but this material is magic. It has a really great green to purple shift, which I love, and it's absolutely perfect for what I was looking for, because I couldn't decide if I wanted a green skirt or a purple skirt, and then I found this in my stash, and I'm like, yes, this is exactly what I need. So it's metallic, it's stretchy, it's very excellent, I love it. So this was also really great to dance in. It didn't really ride up a whole lot. The only thing I will say about the pattern is that the pattern does come out a little bit big, but it's always better to be big than small. So according to my measurements in the pattern, I should be a size small. This did wind up coming out a little bit bigger than the fit I would have liked, and I did take it in just a little bit, mostly down here on the bottom. I brought these seams in, and the pattern calls for a strip of elastic, and I didn't have elastic, and I also didn't feel like going out to buy elastic. The most important part of that was I also really didn't feel like putting my machine through sewing through this again, because my machine has not been cooperating lately. I don't know what's wrong with it, but I didn't really want to push its limits too much, so I just left it as is. It fits tight enough that it stayed on, and that's why this waistband is about twice as big as it should be, because you're supposed to fold it down with the elastic, so it would look something like this. But I didn't feel like dealing with that, so I just left it as is, and it worked out perfectly. I loved it. I got compliments all night on this outfit, and it was absolutely fantastic. The dance that I wore this to was actually supposed to be Valentine's Day themed, but it was on Mardi Gras, which was obviously way more important. So I actually got complimented a lot on both of these outfits. Mainly the blue skirt on the other one. Every single person I danced with that night commented on how much they loved the skirt and how twirly it was, and it was just amazing. So overall, yeah, this project, week-long, I'm calling it a Remnant Rumble. You can read about it on my blog, and I'll link that below in case you're here for my YouTube channel and not for my blog, which is kind of weird, but hey, I'll take it. So this is from my Remnant Rumble weeks 1 and 2. So if you want to see how I made all of these things, keep on watching, and I also do go into a little bit more detail on my blog if you want to read about it. So yeah, I hope you like this video. It's another one that's kind of long, but again, there are supposed to be 4, but really only 3 projects described in it. So yeah, if you want to see how I made most of this, just keep on watching. Pardon the shadows, my lighting is not very good right now. So my printer wasn't cooperating very well, and my black ink isn't working, so I just had some like ghost blue lines that printed out that I was able to follow. So I'm sorry if it's really hard to see what's going on with these pattern pieces. But right now I'm using the one for the band with 3 hooks. I'm kind of already anticipating not using this piece or extending it out a little bit because I want a wider back, and I also might wind up adding a band along the bottom just to make it a little bit longer so that I can get away with it looking more like a crop top instead of an actual bra. So yeah, these are the pattern pieces I'm going to be using. I'm not going to be using the foam, but I cut those out anyway, just in case. So I'm going to talk about the fabric that I'm going to use really quick. So I have this muslin that I bought as a remnant literally just today at Joann's. So I paid like less than $2 for this. So if I like how this turns out, because I'm going to make a mock-up out of it, if I like how this turns out, I might just cheat and use this as the lining, so we shall see. And then for the main fabric, well, we're also going to see like how I like this, and we're going to see if I can get some actual support out of it. And if I can, and if I don't have to wear a real bra underneath, then I have this ridiculously thick canvas. I don't know if you can tell exactly how thick it is. I think this is actual like outdoor grade canvas, so it is really, really thick. So I'm not going to use foam, I'm going to use this instead. And then for the outer fabric, I have this really pretty stretch taffeta that I'm going to use. I actually have the same fabric in blue that I'm going to use for the skirt that I'm planning on making. So I have this, and then I also, which I got as a remnant, I also have this that I got as a remnant. And it's just this really pretty sequin fabric, or paillette, I don't know. I watched a video and I think that's what I got from it. I think these are paillettes instead of sequins, even though paillettes is literally just French for sequins. I learned that in that same video. So this, I'm not entirely sure how I want to overlay this, but I know that's what I want to do. It might not match up the exact silhouette. I might just use the bra as sort of like a lining and then do something completely different with this on top. So here's all the muslin cut out and laid out the way that it should be. So the pattern does not come with instructions, and the most it comes with is a diagram, and it seems like this is how they're supposed to be laid out when they're stitched together. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to sew the cups together, and I'm going to match this line that's in the pattern, and then I think I'm going to sew the cup to the bottom. The cradle is what they're calling it, and I think what's going to happen is I think this seam is going to match up with this line. I'm not sure, but I think that's what's going to happen. There are instructions that come with or they don't really come with the pattern, they're just available, but it's more generic how to sew a bra instructions, and not necessarily like you match up these seams to this point. So this is kind of why I'm making this video. So I'm going to do the cups first, I'm going to assemble that, then I'm going to sew the cups here to the cradle, and then I'm going to sew this piece on afterwards, because this piece needs to get on at some point earlier, because I think this is going to extend a little bit into here. Maybe not, it might not. So we will see what happens. So I'm probably going to do cups first, then I'll probably sew the back piece to the cradle, and then the cups to the cradle, and then this part on last. So I'm going to get to pinning and do that. All right, I'm popping back on real quick. So I sewed the back to the cradle, and I just pressed that to the side, and I also sewed the cups and I pressed that seam to the side. So I'm popping back on because I'm changing the order of when I'm doing it. So I looked, and it doesn't seem to make sense as is, so I looked back to the original diagram of the finished bra, and what happens is this mark winds up in the top half of the cup. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Nothing lines up that way. And then I looked back and I realized you're supposed to sew this piece onto the cup before it gets stitched in, because this seam line from this piece to this piece is this line right here. So that makes a little more sense. So now I'm going to sew this piece to this piece, and then I'm going to sew the cup to the cradle. And hopefully that will make everything great. Alright, so this is pretty much it finished. So since this material doesn't stretch as much as a normal bra material would, even though it has a little bit of give, it doesn't have nearly as much as it should. I went ahead and I added a 3-inch long section on either side because I needed actually about 4 inches closed, but I figured this would give me good leeway because I still don't know how I'm going to do up the back of it. I think I'm gonna put in a zipper, but I'm not 100% sold on that yet. So we shall see, because I have a whole lot of hooks and eyes, but I don't think I have a good zipper that would match the fabric I want to use. So I went ahead, and I'm not sure if I want to do with the sequins. I don't know if I want to do like just an overlay that kind of turns into a high neck, or if I want to just do really thick straps that go from here straight to the back. So I just kind of cut a strip out of the material real quick and made a makeshift strap so that I could try it on and make some fitting notes to see what I want to change about it. I would show you that, but this is really see-through and I don't think you two would like that very much. So I think I am going to wind up drafting a band that's about another probably 2 inches just to add to the bottom of this to give it a little bit more length. So I'm going to get to work drafting that and I'll check back in later. Alright, so I'm not entirely sure where I left off. I've been working on this off and on for the past couple of days, but I have the lining, I have the cups and the cradle all stitched together. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install the cups into the cradle. So when I made this, I went ahead and I basted the heavy canvas I have to the lining fabric so that I can give it a little bit of stability. And you can kind of tell here, hopefully, that I used a zigzag stitch to do the basting because this only has a 3/8 inch seam allowance, which is smaller than what I normally work with, so I figured that might make it a little bit easier to turn the fabric and press it open. And I think it made it a little bit easier, so I like it. I like how that worked. You can kind of see a little bit there, the zigzags. So now I'm just going to sew the cups to the cradle. I don't think I'm going to use an underwire, mostly just because I went to Joann's and I could have sworn they used to sell underwires, but they don't anymore. So maybe depending on how much of this and the skirt that I want to get done tonight, depending on how much of that I get done tonight, I might go to like Marshall's or Ross or something and get like a really cheap bra and just steal the underwire from that. So we will see. Alright, so it's a couple hours later. This is what I have so far. So here is the lining. I've went ahead and inverted this. Now I've went ahead and I'm about to baste the mock-up that I made on the back of the lining. Just because the lining fabric itself, when it comes through on the seams, it's really dark, and then this material is kind of see-through. That doesn't translate too well on camera, but this is a little more see-through than I thought it was going to be, so I'm just going to add this one layer of white so that hopefully none of that will show through on the final outer shell. So I just realized I haven't really talked much about the outer shell. Alright, so this is a nice stretch taffeta. The way that the grain line that I cut it, it stretches this way instead of this way. I don't know, I just feel like it would be more stable if it doesn't have a stretch this way. We will see. But I am out of white thread, so I actually used the same pale baby pink. I didn't think it was that noticeable, and I also sewed this on a zigzag stitch that you can kind of see here, just to help keep the stretch going a little bit. So now I'm going to attach this to the lining, which has all of the structural integrity. So yeah, I'll do that and then check back in afterwards. Okay, so here it is all stitched together. What I did was I machine stitched the lining to the top up here, and then I pressed it, and then it doesn't match up well on the bottom, so I flipped it right side out and I folded up the bottom and I folded the top down to meet it. Not gonna lie, I really hate how this turned out. It does not look good on the body at all. It looks so bad. I think this really does need to be made smaller with the stretchy fabric, because this is a piece completely added on and all of this was added on. I think this bit is fine as is, but I think, yeah, this just needs to be done with stretchy fabric and not have any support to it on the sides. I also think it would have helped a lot if I had put all of the structural integrity stuff in the layer that has the outer fabric. I think that would have helped a lot. I think that would have made turning it inside out easier. I'm actually going to play around with seeing if I can get this to look good turned this way, because it's for a Valentine's Day themed outfit that I'm making, and I picked these pink roses because I thought they would be a nice lining, but this, I'm going to play around and see how this looks on the outside, and this might end up looking better and it'll still work out. It just means that this won't be as wearable for me on a regular basis, and that'll also give me a little bit more room to play with the hooks, because I'm gonna have to fold this over and I really don't have a whole lot of give on either side for that, so it'll look kind of unfinished on the inside, which I'm trying to not do, but I keep winding up having to do it just to make things fit. So I'm probably going to wind up doing that, and then I'm going to hopefully make the sparkly bit on top later tonight, because I know if I wait until tomorrow, I'm just not going to do it. So I'm going to push myself to get that done tonight, and we'll see how it looks if I have this on the outside. Okay, so project number 3 of I don't know how many things I'm going to be making in this video. So Mardi Gras is coming up on Tuesday, and I am going to a dance at the Edison, so I want to look super tacky and very native New Orleanian because I am blood oath obligated. Oh, here's a kitten. It's a nosy kitten. No kittens in my room. Anyway, so I am blood oath obligated to wear tacky amounts of purple, green, and gold every Mardi Gras as a native New Orleanian. So I will be making a tube top out of this very small but strangely perfectly sized piece of remnant fabric. It has a 4-way stretch. It's gold. It's not gold lame. I don't know if you can tell here. Gold lame would be more, definitely more Mardi Gras, but this is pretty close and I like it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this stretch of fabric, I'm going to fold it in half, stitch it to kind of double layer it, and then I'm going to flip it inside out, or right side out rather, and then I'm just going to stitch along here to make just a really simple tube top. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this really pretty holographic gold paillette fabric, and I'm going to do something fun with the neckline with this, but I'm going to have to probably drape that and then hand stitch it on later because my machine does not like tulle and my machine does not like sequins, so sequins on tulle is just a nightmare waiting to happen. So I'm going to get to work on that because I think that'll go really quickly and I can probably get that done within an hour, and then I'll start working on the skirt. So I will check back in when I have this done. So I don't have the sequins attached yet, but I wanted to just come on real quick and talk about what I did. So I wound up sewing the two halves together like I initially planned. I was going to sew along the edges and kind of finish those off, but my machine had an aneurysm and was absolutely not having it, which was really frustrating because I'm trying to get to a point where I want to finish off more of the things I make a little more professionally. That is a goal that I was trying to get to this year, and honestly, I just don't think it's worth the headache to try to fix my machine to do it, because my machine, the half of the zigzag stitch just isn't catching properly. So when I sewed up the middle, my machine has a much easier time sewing thicker fabrics and more layers of fabrics than 1 or 2. I don't know if that's just me or if that's normal. But I did go ahead and sew up here. You can kind of tell here it's skipping stitches sometimes. So that was basically happening the entire length, and my machine was set to zigzag, but I was getting just a straight stitch, and that's not what you want at all for stretchy fabrics. It takes the stretch right out of it, and then when it tries to stretch, it pops the stitches. So I just figured that this kind of knit will not fray. I have a dress made out of the same material that I bought at a store maybe 4 years ago, and I've been wearing it constantly. And the sleeves and the hem and the slit in it are not finished at all, and they have not frayed. So this kind of knit will not fray, so I don't really need to worry about it. Also, I know that I don't think I will ever wear this in a setting that's not very costumey, so I'm not going to be too overly concerned with how the edges look. So I'm just going to try this on real quick and make sure it fits, even though there's not really a whole lot I can do at this point. And then I'm going to add on the sequins and see what I can do there. All right, another day, another project. So real quick, I wanted to update you on what I got done with the tube top. So since this base material is stretchy, it's pretty much entirely spandex, and this mesh is not. It was really important for me to pin the mesh on while I was wearing the tube top, so I went ahead and I did that, mostly just to make sure the placement was where I wanted it. Hopefully I'll take some nice pictures tomorrow night when I wear it. And I also went ahead and I stitched on 2 hooks and eyes for the back closure. One thing that I did learn from the last project that I worked on with the hooks and eyes is that it's a lot easier when you remove the sequins from the section. I only did on the outer 2 layers, but I wish I had on the inner 2 layers because it makes stitching them so much easier. So just real quick, I want to turn this inside out, and if you're not used to sewing with stretch fabrics, just a really quick tip for hand stitching is you only want to do 1 stitch at a time, because when you do multiple stitches, it locks in place and it doesn't allow the full stretch, and then you lose all of the stretchiness and it makes it more likely for you to pop stitches later. So I just did really simple, it's hard to tell because this is the underside, but I had some metallic thread from my mother's stash from a long time ago, and I just did really simple cross stitches just all along, about every inch or so around here. You don't want to do them, you don't want to make the stitches too big because that's a lot of fabric that gets within the stitch that gets locked and you can't stretch it anymore. So it's better to do more smaller stitches than fewer big stitches. So yeah, I'm excited about this. It's very, very sparkly. I hope the camera picks it up. So the Edison, which is where I'm going to be wearing this, has a lot of theatrical, very low lighting, and I know Sparkles picks up very, very, very well over there, so I'm really excited to see how this is going to look on the dance floor. So the last project that I'm going to be making for this kind of Mardi Gras dance outfit costume kind of thing is actually this skirt, and I went ahead and this was actually a free pattern on Craftsy. I'm gonna go ahead and link that below if I can find it again. I really hope I can find it again. So I went and I downloaded a bunch of free patterns probably about 2 years ago now, and I pop on every couple of months to see what's new, and this was one of them. So I was looking for a true pencil skirt, but I wanted something that was going to be easy to dance in. So I was going through my stash of patterns and I found this. Okay, so my camera battery died, which means I will actually have to go grocery shopping tonight real quick before it gets dark. So I can't start on this quite yet. So real quick, I'm just gonna be using this pattern that I will link below if I can find it again. And I actually got this really cool fabric. I'm hoping it really picks up. It's kind of hard to show, but it has this green to purple shift. It's actually a Cosplay by Yaya Han fabric. I already know my machine is not going to like this, so I know this is going to be a massive headache to try to sew, but I'm going to do it anyway, so I might wind up having to hand stitch most of this. But I got this as a remnant, so I have exactly 1 yard of this, and the size said that for the size I am, I need exactly 1 yard, so I'm really hoping that stands true. So I'm going to cut this out, and eventually I'll check back in, I don't know when. So I have all of the pieces cut out. I really didn't have a whole lot of room left over, like this big piece just barely fit, and up here it didn't quite fit all the way, but all of the discrepancy fits within the 3/8 inch seam allowance, so I'm hoping that it all works out for the best. So I have some scrap fabric right here left over. I actually had a pretty decent chunk of fabric left over, but because of the way that it was laid out, I didn't have a whole lot of wiggle room. So I have some scrap fabric over here that I'm going to try to sew through just real quick with a zigzag stitch, so wish me luck. Okay, so ignore the color, I just didn't change the bobbin yet, but surprisingly, the machine sewed through this fabric really well in all of the directions and orientations, so fingers crossed that hopefully it continues to sew this well and this will be not a complete and total headache. Okay, so the first thing that the direction says to do, so there's this little notch, I'm going to show you on the other one, but you're supposed to fold that up, and then I'm going to stitch along here real quick just to sew that in. I might wind up having to tack this down with a couple of stitches by hand, but that'll probably be the last thing that I do. So real quick, I also wanted to point out, let me move this so you can see easier. This is kind of what I was talking about with not having a whole lot of room, so you can see, or not having a lot of wiggle room when cutting out the fabric, so you can see that the pattern stops here, but hopefully that should fall within the 3/8 inch seam allowance. So I'm hoping that it's not an issue, and even if it is, I'm sure I can just take that in very slowly as much as I need to. So I'm going to do that, and then once this is folded over and pinned, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin with both of the wrong sides up, I'm going to pin and make the front panel and then stitch all up here. And then after that, the front panel is going to get sewn to the back panel, which should be really straightforward. I don't think I'm gonna need to show that. And then I'm gonna do the waistband. So hopefully, fingers crossed, hopefully all of that goes very smoothly. So I don't know if you can see, but my machine is having a very rough time right now. Not entirely sure why. It's kind of been doing this off and on. Honestly, it's probably, oh God, almost 10 years old, I think. I don't remember exactly which Christmas I got this, but it's been through a lot and it's been knocked around a lot, so sometimes things get really messed up. So I'm just gonna fight with this for a while, and I'm gonna give myself probably until 10 o'clock tonight. It's currently 9:30, and if I can't get this decently working by then I'll just give up and do this by hand, which I really don't want to do, but that might be the best option at this point. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Alright, so here we have the skirt, or what I have of the skirt so far. Here's the front, there's the back. So I see now why this got turned up, and it's so it could get stitched upwards, so that when you eventually turn the hem inward, it's already up there and you don't have to worry about it. I'm not going to do that because I don't trust my machine to be able to do that. My machine is just being aggravating in general lately. It keeps snapping the thread and it keeps snagging on things, and I'm really frustrated with it, and I think it's about time to start thinking of a new machine, which I have been looking for anyway, but it is time. This machine needs to go out the window. So I went ahead, and when I tried the skirt on, it was a little bit too loose around the bottom, or looser than I wanted. So if I turn this inside out, you will see that this is the bottom. I didn't know what color thread to use, so I just used purple. So this was the original stitch line. I actually kind of brought this in by about an inch on either side, and it fits a little bit better. It's still a little bit looser in the back than I would like, but I don't think I don't want to trust my machine to be able to just stitch a dart in the back. My machine is currently off and resting right now, so if it decides to behave itself, maybe I'll give it a shot, but right now I just want to focus on getting the waistband in. The waistband called for elastic in the original instructions, and I didn't feel like buying elastic, so I don't have elastic, so it will be interesting to see how that works out. I'm anticipating maybe cutting a slit in the back and installing a zipper, which again I really don't want to do because my machine is not cooperating, but we will see what happens. I also decided that I'm not going to hem the skirt at all because, as I talked about earlier in the last one, this kind of knit will not fray pretty much no matter what you do to it. So all I'm gonna have to do is pretty much just cut here and on the same seam on the other side, just to make it look a little bit smoother. And I'm just gonna leave that as is. I'm not gonna worry about fraying because that's just not going to be an issue here. So I'm going to attempt to attach the waistband. It should be pretty straightforward, and then I will report back from there. Alright, so here we have the finished skirt. I'm leaving this top edge unfinished because, again, like I said, it will not fray. I think I would have left this unfolded because I don't really have a way to fold it over and hem it again without having either ridiculously obvious visible top stitching, and the nameplate or the instructions little section of the label said do not iron, so I don't want to risk melting anything together if I just try to give this a good press. So yeah, hopefully you can see a good purple to green shift, and it'll go hopefully really well with the gold top that I made. So yeah, I'll try to take some nice pictures tomorrow night when I'm out dancing. And yeah, I'm excited. I actually kind of like this. It's really unprofessional and don't look on the inside of it, but I like how it turned out. Okay, now clearly, since obviously I hate myself, I've decided that I want to finish off the edges of the gold top, just because it looks really bad with both the top and the skirt being unfinished, so I at least want to have one of them, and I think I'm going to have an easier time or a better time with the top, so I've decided to finish this off, just fold this edge inward, and I'm going to zigzag stitch it with this incredibly thin, frail metallic thread that's purely decorative and has no structural value whatsoever. So clearly, since I hate myself, that's the most logical course of action. So yeah, I'll be screaming at my machine for the next probably hour and a half. So surprisingly, that actually went a lot better than expected. Now there are some parts around the seam that I knew that my machine just wasn't going to be able to stitch through, so I'm going to have to do that by hand. And again, my machine does not like tulle and it does not like sequins, so it does not like sequins on tulle, so I know I'm going to have to do these sections by hand, and I think because it is not a true Sam Patel ensemble unless I do something at the literal last minute, I think I'm going to bring this with me to work on during my break. This sewing should only really take me a half hour maximum. It's not going to take me that long. So I can get that done on my break tomorrow. So I think that is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and call this done. I'm pleasantly surprised with how it came out, and I'll try to get some really good pictures of it tomorrow night.